In the 1950s, a factory worker's paycheck was just $22 a week, and the average pantry held barely 2 cans. Yet somehow, every night, dinner still appeared. Spam, beans, and a few slices of bread kept American families going when nothing else would. These weren't just recipes, they were lifelines. But how did humble meals like these shape entire generations? And what memories do they still hold? A factory worker's $22 weekly paycheck in 1953 didn't stretch far. After rent and bills, maybe $10 remained for groceries, less if the car needed gas or a child outgrew their shoes. The kitchen pantry in a typical working-class home held an average of just over 2 cans at any given time. Sometimes it was a can of beans, maybe some soup or evaporated milk. That was it. The rest of the shelves stood bare, waiting for payday. Grocery ads promised pork chops for 35 cents a pound and white bread for 14 cents a loaf. But those prices still added up fast when feeding 6 or more. Spam cost 33 cents a can, pork and beans a dime, and a quart of milk 21 cents. A pound of hamburger might be 40 cents, but a family needed more than that to fill everyone's plates. Most families spent a third of their income on food, and still, the refrigerator was often nearly empty by week's end. Mothers counted every penny, every slice of bread, and every spoonful of sugar. Every meal was a calculation, how to turn 2 cans and a handful of staples into dinner that would last until the next check arrived. Spam sat on the pantry shelf like a promise. At 33 cents a can, it was cheaper than pork chops or roast, and it lasted for months without refrigeration. Mothers sliced it thick, fried it in the same skillet used for bacon, and served it with white bread or scrambled eggs. The salty, crisped edges gave the illusion of Sunday dinner, even if the meat came from a tin. In 1953, Hormel sold over 10 million cans of Spam across America, each one feeding families who needed protein that wouldn't spoil before payday. Beans and weenies was another kitchen miracle. A can of pork and beans cost a dime. Hot dogs, 42 cents a pound. Mothers cut the hot dogs into coins and stirred them into the beans, heating everything together until the sweet tomato sauce bubbled. Served with slices of soft white bread, 16 cents a loaf. This meal could feed 6 children with leftovers for lunch the next day. When even those staples ran low, bread and milk filled the gap. Stale bread torn into a bowl, milk poured over, sometimes sprinkled with sugar if any was left. It wasn't a meal anyone craved, but it kept hunger away until the next trip to the store. These foods weren't about pride or presentation. They were about making do, stretching every cent, and turning what little was left into something warm on the table. Carl Jensen's father came home from Korea with a taste for chipped beef on toast. In their Davenport kitchen, Tuesday nights meant SOS, sliced dried beef, a can from the surplus store, stirred into thick white gravy and poured over toast. The meal cost pennies, but it filled the house with the smell of pepper and flour, and it filled the family's bellies. After the war, the U.S. government released more than 12 million pounds of surplus beef to American markets. Chipped beef, once rationed for soldiers, became a budget staple for families like the Jensens. By 1959, nearly 3 in 10 households served some version of creamed chipped beef, often called SOS, though no one said what the letters stood for in front of the kids. Stretching meat was an everyday skill. Oatmeal wasn't just for breakfast. Mothers mixed it into meatloaf, using a cup of oats for every pound of hamburger. The oats soaked up fat and broth, swelling the loaf and making a single pound serve 6 or more. In the right hands, a 40-cent package of ground beef, a handful of oats, and a few spoons of ketchup became Sunday dinner and Monday sandwiches. When even that was too dear, fried bologna stepped in. Bologna cost less than a quarter a pound in the mid-1960s. Sliced thick, fried until the edges curled, and served on white bread. It gave the illusion of a real meal. These weren't meals born of abundance. They were the result of mothers who read USDA bulletins, watched grocery ads, and learned every trick to stretch a dollar. No one wasted a scrap. Every meal was a lesson in survival and quiet ingenuity. Cornbread and buttermilk meant something different in Alabama than a mayonnaise sandwich did in a Pennsylvania lunchroom. In 1967, a survey found that nearly 2/3 of Alabama families, 62%, served cornbread at least once a week. A 10-pound sack of cornmeal, just 68 cents, could last a month. Mary Ellen Harper, born and raised outside Decatur, remembers her mother mixing cornmeal with buttermilk before dawn, the biscuits baked in a cast-iron skillet, and eaten at the kitchen table before the sun was up. For Mary Ellen, cornbread was pride, not poverty. It was what fueled a day in the fields and what brought the family together at the end of it. In northern cities, survival looked different. Lori Martinez grew up in Scranton, where her father worked swing shifts at the mill, and money was always short. Lori's lunchbox sometimes held nothing but 2 slices of white bread spread with mayonnaise, 48 cents for a jar that had to last the week. Sugar sandwiches, bread, butter, and a sprinkle of sugar, 55 cents for a bag, showed up when there was no meat, no cheese, not even peanut butter. Ketchup sandwiches, just bread and a smear of red, cost next to nothing. These foods filled empty stomachs, but in the school cafeteria, they brought a different kind of hunger. Lori ate quickly, hoping no one would notice, tucking her sandwich away before the other girls could see. For some, cornbread was a badge of home. For others, a mayonnaise sandwich was a secret to hide. Food was never just food. It was identity, memory, and sometimes quiet shame. A thick block of government cheese sat on the kitchen counter, wrapped in plain packaging and stamped with a USDA seal. In the 1970s, the U.S. Department of Agriculture distributed over 1 billion pounds of processed American cheese to families in need. These orange bricks arrived through county offices, church basements, and community centers, free to anyone who qualified. The cheese melted into casseroles, grilled cheese sandwiches, and macaroni, stretching meals for another day. It was not deli cheese, but it kept children fed when grocery money ran out. Alongside the cheese, powdered milk became a staple in countless homes. A 1-pound packet costing the government about 30 cents made enough milk for several days. Mixed with water, poured over cereal or into coffee, it never tasted exactly like the real thing, but it filled the gap when fresh milk was too expensive. By 1974, more than 500 million pounds of cheese and 200 million pounds of powdered milk were distributed in a single year. These foods did not just fill stomachs, they shaped the taste of survival in American kitchens. Tuna noodle casserole was more than a recipe. It was a lifeline, especially in the 1970s when every cent counted. A single can of tuna, just 45 cents in 1974, turned into dinner for the whole family. Egg noodles cost 30 cents a bag. Cream of mushroom soup, another 40 cents. For 85 cents, a mother could fill a casserole dish, top it with crushed potato chips, and bake enough to feed 6 hungry children. The math was simple, and the miracle was real. 1 can, 1 bag, 1 can of soup, and dinner was done. Grocery ads in 1974 promised these prices every week, and families across America clipped coupons to make them stretch even further. Tuna casserole became a weeknight staple, showing up on chrome-edged tables from Ohio to California. It wasn't just about saving money. It was about making something warm, filling, and familiar out of almost nothing. In kitchens where the budget had to stretch to payday, this was a triumph that tasted like hope. Today, 1 in 8 American households still faces food insecurity, proving that the struggle to put meals on the table is not just history, it's reality. The ingenuity and sacrifice in every humble meal remind us resilience isn't just remembered, it's needed now. Share your story below.